Hey guys, so here is the study guide video as promised. I'm just going to go through the entire study guide in one video, so feel free to pause this as needed if you want to watch it over several days. So of course number one I'm not going to do because all of these words are on your notes. So we're going to skip down to number two. So number two, remember how I told you that there's three basic units of superstructure? Even though we talked about four, joints is still part of skeleton and muscle. So we're not going to really consider joints to be one of the three basic units. So skeleton, muscle, and skin are the three basic units. How many bones are in the adult human body? 206. And then what does red bone marrow cells do? So they make bone cells. Yellow bone marrow cells also do that as well. And of course, not only do they make bone cells, but they make stem cells as well. Number five, how many skeletal muscles are in the human body? That would be 640. So that is why we only talked about a few of them, because we would be here all week if we went over all 640. What are the two functions of the skin? So mainly it's to insulate us, which means to keep us warm, and then also to protect us. Okay, so it's that outer layer of protection, and then it of course keeps our bodies warm. Number seven, what types of bone is the medullary cavity surrounded by? So you have the compact bone and the spongy bone. So where the description, it says describe those two. Compact is very solid. Spongy is porous because it has the holes in the spongy bone. Number eight, what connects a person's upper limbs to the axial skeleton? That would be the pectoral girdle. So that is going to be what connects your upper limbs, like your arms, of course, to the main axial skeleton. And then what bones make up this connector? So you would have your scapula, which is your shoulder blades, and then you would have your clavicles. Okay, and then your arms are attached to those two things. What two regions is the arm divided into? So the upper part of your arm is the humerus, and then the forearm, which is the lower part, is your ulna and your radius. Number 10, what connects a person's lower limbs to the axial skeleton? So that would be your pelvic girdle. So keep in mind, pelvic is your hip area, so it's your lower area. And then back up here to number 8, pectoral would be your chest area. So it makes sense that pectoral is upper, pelvic is lower. And then what bones make up this connector? So you have two cocci or coxa that make up your hip bone, and then you have your tailbone, which is your sacrum. So then your leg is attached to these types of bones. Number 11, what two regions is the leg divided into? So you have your upper leg or your thigh, which is the femur bone, and then your lower leg is going to be the tibia and the fibula. And moving on to the second page. Number 12, so what type of skeleton do insects have and what chemical is it made of? So remember, insects, they do not have an inner skeleton. Their skeleton is on the outside of their bodies. So they have an exoskeleton, and it is made up of chitin, which is very, very similar to our cartilage. So it's a little bit flexible, but tough enough that it protects the insect. Number 13, what type of muscle are skeletal muscles? So skeletal muscles are voluntary, which means you actually have to think to control them. If you want to flex your arm, you have to think about flexing your arm. So these you have to think about in order for them to move. Number 14, what are the four major joints in the human body? That would be hinge, ball and socket, saddle, and washer. And just to keep this video kind of short, just make sure that you're familiar with what each joint does, which is on your notes. I think that's on page 10 of your notes. So just make sure that you look over those. Number 15, be able to recognize and label the 4 major joints. Again, that is on page 10 of your notes. Number 16, what covers the bones in a joint? So this is the articular cartilage. Remember, the articular cartilage is the padding that is on the end of your bones, and it just allows you to not have your bones grinding against each other. So it's that extra layer of padding and protection. Without it, your bones would literally be moving against each other, which causes a lot of pain. So you want that cartilage there. And unfortunately, the older you get, the less cartilage you have between your bones. Number 17, when 2 bones are joined together, they are held together by strips of tissue called ligaments, okay, which allows you to stretch. Number 18, what are most joints surrounded by? So most joints are surrounded by articular capsule, okay, and there's 2 parts to the articular capsule, and the articular capsule, of course, is the bag that surrounds your joints for protection. So you have the fibrous capsule, and then you have the synovial membrane, which is what makes the synovial fluid, okay, which is lubrication for your joints. So what is the synovial joint? So it is a joint that moves smoothly and easily. So your knee is a synovial joint. Number 20, what type of movement controls smooth muscle? So this is involuntary, which means you do not have to think about it moving. It just moves on its own, and most of the time you probably don't notice it at all. So your abdomen is an example of a smooth muscle that moves without you thinking. So anytime you are standing or sitting or trying to get up from laying down, your abdomen is expanding and contracting without you thinking about it. How is the heart controlled? So the heart is also another involuntary muscle, so you don't have to think about it moving. So your brain and your sinoatrial node is what controls your heart, okay? And thankfully, it beats on its own, so it's an involuntary muscle. Number 22, what are the 2 basic layers of the skin? So you have your epidermis and your dermis, because remember your hypodermis is mainly just fat, so it's not really considered skin. So the epidermis is your outer layer, the dermis is your inner layer. 23, what is the epidermis composed of? Well, on the outer part it is dead cells, but on the inner part it is living cells. What is a hair follicle? So it is a tiny pit on the epidermis where the cells grow, and then they die to make the hair longer. So the hair grows as well. Every single time a cell dies, your hair is actually growing because your hair is made of dead cells. 25, what connects the hair follicle to a smooth muscle in the dermis? The erector pili muscle. So that is what causes your hair to stand up when you're nervous or cold, and that is also what can give you goosebumps as well. And then 26 and 27, this is going to just be up to you, be able to label the bones, and of course you have a little practice sheet in your notes. I believe that was maybe page 4. And then 27, be able to label just a few of your skeletal muscles that is on that picture as well. And I can't remember what picture of your notes it is. But they are figures 11.2 and 11.4. And that will conclude our study guide video.